Dude, we are so back. A lot of y'all are probably sick to death of Ableton Move content at this point, but I'm hoping my perspective can be somewhat valuable. I've extensively used a lot of similar portable standalone devices that are now the Ableton Move's competition, so I'm hoping that I'm especially well situated to test this thing out and evaluate what it can and cannot do and how it stacks up to its contemporaries. I've watched a bunch of videos on it and taken a quick look through the manual, but I will be going in somewhat blind, and I've got some specific stuff I really want to test to see how far I can push this thing. Let's get into it. All right, quick first impressions on the hardware. Nice resistance on these knobs. Nice clickiness on these buttons. Maybe a bit loud for using in public, but what are you gonna do? It's not heavy per se, but it's got some weight to it, some girth to it. I think that's commendable. It feels very solid, even though it's plastic. All right, so off camera, I went and loaded in a bunch of my own sounds using the local.move domain. This and your computer have to be connected to the same Wi-Fi network for that to work. But then you go to local.move, and then I was able to just load in a bunch of folders of custom sounds, because that's what I'm really interested in using. Once I got everything on the same Wi-Fi network, that whole process was pretty painless, but I did have a few folders that I uploaded reject some files, and I don't know which ones. So it just said, this doesn't fit the format, so it doesn't work. That's fine, but I don't necessarily know which things got rejected for loading onto this thing, which could be a potential problem later on. And it didn't let me create folders from scratch for some reason. Regardless, I've now got custom sounds on here, so I need to figure out how to go back to the sets view. Let's see. That's an undo, presumably. That's your shift. So that takes you to your sets. And then by default, it'll load up random kits and random presets. I think you can reset that. And I probably will. I've got a couple levels of things to work with here. What I need is a blank kit. Templates. Cool, so those are all empty now. These are all their built-in things. You're going to spend a lot of time doing this, probably. User samples. So I hadn't considered the fact that I'll probably need to make these very short in order to actually see what's in them. We're going to audition sounds. Okay, you know, one thing I might want to do is see if I can set my velocity to full level. That might warrant a quick look at the manual, actually. Hold shift and press step 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Full velocity on. That's a lot better. For me personally, I tend to turn velocity sensitivity off, but it is nice to have it. And then we got to go back in. Oh man. So I can't be too annoyed about this, because this is the part of any process on any Groovebox that takes a bit of doing, unless you have like more preset kits, which at some point I probably do need to dive into how to make custom kits on this thing, but we'll get there when we get there. Okay, let's look at some editing for these maybe. We got macros. By default, these go by semitones. Let's see what else we got. We can cut the sample. Visual feedback's decent. Tech. Hold. Yeah, you'll need to mess with hold and decay at the same time. And then a playback effect. Stretch. So that's your stretch. That's the only place time stretching appears, if I'm understanding correctly. A pitch envelope. That could be useful. Punch. And then these are the parameters of that effect you just pulled up. That could be useful. Sub oscillator. Noise. Saturator. Here we go. So here's the real question. Is everything sent to one saturator? Because that would be unfortunate, honestly. In some ways it can be nice. It can be nice to stack stuff, but usually if I want some distorted elements, I want to distort multiple things, but not have them just completely crowd each other out. Not only does it look like the saturator affects everything, but the dry wet of the saturator affects the entire track. That is genuinely kind of unfortunate. So then what about a reverb send? Let's see what we can get out of it. So let's step sequence something. That automatically starts playback. That is certainly a choice that was made. pre-shifted clap, and so I want to be able to scoot these forward. Let's see. They did make it intuitive. Okay, so that's not global. That's a step-by-step basis. Good. I'm scared to hit any of these buttons because I don't know exactly what they do yet. Ooh, here we are, 16 pitches. So what I like about this, I mean, for one thing, it's funny to me that they call this 16 pitches. It's obviously supposed to be 16 levels, just with the license plates changed. Obviously, MPC doesn't have a monopoly on that concept, and I'm glad it's in here. What I like about the idea of this is I'm pretty sure you're supposed to be able to do scales for this. Repeat rate, okay, that's fine. This doesn't have any shift controls. Loop doubled. No! Undo, come in and clutch. Clip 50% quantized. The whole clip, I'm used to the way the MPC allows you to do quantization, where you can select notes and choose what gets quantized and what doesn't. This looks like it's going to just be blunt force quantize everything. I think I have to actually make it do it. Clip 100% quantize. Oh! So what that just did is that quantized everything, including my intentionally shifted stuff, which is, okay, once again, understandable. I'm going to load in a new sound, and I want to see if it's going to auto-quantize it, because if that's the case, then the quantized behavior would actually be fine. So I'm going to play something outside of the grid on purpose. So it didn't quantize it. But if I were to go in and quantize that after the fact, it would theoretically do it for the whole clip, which I don't want. I am more than willing to be wrong on this, because if I'm wrong, that's actually better. But here's my current understanding, because the manual is basically silent on this. From what I can tell, your recordings are not quantized on the way in, even if you set this quantized to 100%. But if you go to apply quantization to something, it'll apply it to the entire clip. Meaning that if you have something like carefully placed pre-shifted claps or anything a little bit off the grid, you can hear this is a bit off because I played it a bit off on purpose. If I go in and quantize all of it, it messes up my pattern. So what that means is, theoretically, if I want to play something in live and have it be perfectly on the grid, I can't. Like, that really kills the immediacy and the don't overthink it of this thing, which is like their whole marketing pitch. I need to either be able to quantize stuff more surgically, or I need to be able to have stuff quantized on the way in and have that toggle on and off. As it is, I don't think that is a thing, which is a little bit shocking to me, to be honest. Which is why I think I'm wrong about this, because that would be a crazy oversight. All right, I spent some more time looking through some manuals and videos and such, and I couldn't find an answer on the quantize, so I'm just going to chalk that up to either me really not understanding this, or this not being explored, or I don't know, maybe this is just not set up to do that. See about shaping some sounds. By the way, if you hold down shift, this will do tune it by cents instead of by semitones. I'm going to see about expanding this loop, first of all. So the easy way to do this is to just bink, double the loop. Now it's a 2-bar loop. You can see the bars here. So let's add another kick. And then let me get rid of this guy. So I'm in bar 2. This goes away. Maybe I get rid of this on the second bar. Okay, so this gets points for step sequencing, and the way you're able to tell which bar you're on, like, that's reasonably intuitive. It immediately became easy for me to just check where I'm at and make changes with confidence, which is nice. I want to see how I can change this to like a scale. So I wonder if... Oh, this will probably be... Yeah! In key. And I want it in a minor key. So I'm in bar 2. Let's do that. If I go to the settings for this, there's a way to get to the individual parameters for each of these samples. So by default, we've seen this. That's what the macros are mapped to. You should also... Okay, here we are. for what I just did, you can switch between the two settings of what these knobs do. So this is filter and setup. So this is where you're going to be able to like filter your sound. So what I wanted to do is filter this sound. And that even has an envelope. It's only one filter. That's unfortunate. And I'm going to choose to make my peace with it. I wanted to cut some lows. That's good, because if you're going to be stacking samples, you need to be able to get surgical and do so easily. And to a degree, you can. So now this floats on top of everything else a bit better, I think. I could also do something like cut this to be a little more of a background element. Or maybe adjust this. And you've even got a couple different low-pass filters to pick from. And you can send things to choke. You can tinker with what velocity effects. There's a panning feature. Take those any day of the week. Let's get a synth track involved, because we haven't done that yet. I've been tunneling on samples, because that's what I was hoping that this would have an emphasis on. And so far, I've got very mixed feelings. So I'm finally going to pivot a little bit. But what I want to do is tweak other stuff beyond these 8 parameters. Because I don't want that to be legato in the way that it currently is. Not exactly what I wanted, but the capture does work. It's a cool feature. I'd much rather have it than not have it, so I'll take what I can get. But here's what I want. More control. You can't even select whether it's monophonic or polyphonic. Is that by design? Let's find out. Okay, so that setting can be changed. This is just a generic synth track. So I don't want this to be legato. And I would love it if there was a second bank of knobs to change settings like that. I feel like that ought to be possible, and I'm just not seeing how. I'm not convinced you can change that, which would be a right bummer. Let's capture that. And then I can quantize that. And that'll only affect the clip that has this patch in it. That's kind of fun. I could turn this track down. I can launch that. Let's copy this second drum clip and then just get rid of a bunch of stuff. So here's a thing I've been very skeptical about. Scenes. No, I was too careful. I feel like that... Am I crazy to say that that's too finicky to trigger whole scenes? The slide your finger down thing I am so deeply not sold on. Okay, so then we're gonna do another track maybe. So I'm gonna fill it out. So notice, this will keep recording as long as I don't stop. Except I don't want that last bar. Can I get rid of it? Oh, we've not messed with this much. 4 bars, easy. Mute that. Hold this down, turn it down a bit. Try to get into the speed a little bit. Let's try something with note repeat in it. Let me load a new sample. So that's hitting F. So we go down to E, E sharp. Okay, so I've got this little one shot. Let's keep the attack sharp. I want to turn the hold down but the decay up so it's nice and stabby. That's basically what I want to do, but more cleanly. So I'm going to do it with step sequencing. Do, do, do. And so then I want some sort of note repeat. And then I think I need this to be on chromatic for now. I think I might actually send this whole thing up an octave. I wonder if that's going to break anything. All right, so I pitched this up an octave. I matched it with that by ear just to make sure. It does occur to me, by the way, that keeping note repeat and then just hitting a thing is kind of a quantize on the way in function. Not sure how I feel about that. Okay, that is hitting too late, I think. I'm going to get rid of note repeat and just punch that in manually. Okay. And then I can mute this. Bring it back. Now, using our newfound knowledge, we can go to the other bank and I can mess with the filter, cut a bunch of lows on this so it doesn't fight with our main bass. Also, you're probably noticing at this point, no sidechain. As far as I know, that's not a thing. I have no idea whether that's planned, but I wouldn't assume so. That's unfortunate. I think that's a missed opportunity, but here we are. So let's try the big thing. I'm really curious to see if this works. Here's a built-in demo project. I want to know if I can switch between entire projects, or sets as they call them here. Kind of. Let's try this then. Let's copy this set. Let's do some major change. I could add something for on the floor. Because basically, I am trying to see if I can replicate the Novation Circuit project switching on this, because it seems like it should be possible. All right. You can. So here's a further test. Will the next project you select take on the tempo of the previous project? If I go here, just crank up the tempo to something ridiculous. We go back to our projects. No. Unfortunate. Okay, so you will have to have your tempos match, but it came in at the right time. A couple more things I want to try. First of all, I want to try recording something using the internal mic, just sample it in. And I want to try it without being prompted by the manual to see if I can figure it out. Cool, that's easy enough. We take those. Well, that was easy enough. Let's sample something else. And you'll notice it auto sets the beginning to where the transient is, or at least where it thinks the transient is. Okay, what about... Okay, see, now I'm obsessed. Now I want to just sample everything. The music box. Not much going on there, but that's okay. So this one we would need to cut. Yeah, that one's less successful. That's okay. And finally... How the fuck? My kazoo's broken. Okay, you can probably cut that. So we've got that. What I want to see is whether there's a way to export that. Oh, okay. So it looks like it auto saves stuff into user recordings, so all the garbage I just recorded is in there somewhere. Sampler. You set your sample from user recordings. I imagine if you hold down Shift, you could make micro adjustments. Yeah. And then I want this to ring out, so the attack is fine. I can actually soften it a little bit. Decay, release. Filter LFO. And then we should be able to apply an effect to this entire track. Ooh. So that's the foundation of like a different beat entirely. And suddenly, the idea of saving presets makes a bit more sense because I have like adjusted effects and prepared this sample to be chromatic. I can see myself using that for sure. All right, sick. And then quantize you. All right, now that I've spent some time with the Ableton Move, let me give you one big overarching thought that's been percolating about it through my brain. And that is what I'm going to call the paradox of the power user. As a hardcore Groovebox enthusiast, or power user, if I'm allowed to self-apply that term, I'm used to getting quite a lot out of fairly limited devices. And once I learned that you could have up to 4 drum tracks, all with 16 samples that are individually manipulated and can even be pitched to a keyboard, I was like, hey, the 4-track limit's not so bad. You could still get quite a lot out of this device. If the workflow is good, and if you can do a few other things that I was hoping it would be able to do, but had to test myself, it would be pretty solid. And as it turns out, it can do a lot of the things I hoped it could. You could get plenty of layers and complexity just with the 4 tracks that are on board this thing. And even things like project switching, which is not really a documented feature, do kind of work. And that is very promising. But at the same time, as a Groovebox enthusiast, I know very well what these limited budget devices are capable of. And there are certain things that the Ableton Move either can't do, or I'm pretty sure they can't do, that it really feels like they should be able to do. So, for example, you've got my proposed workaround to having a limited track count of just layering many one-shots across multiple drum tracks. And on paper, that works. But because of the quantization seemingly not giving you the level of control that you would actually need it to have, you'd have to really overthink how your layering sounds in order to actually get the workflow to work. You would have to either basically wait till you're sure you're done to start moving notes around in time, or you would have to basically move notes around in time at one point and then never touch quantize again and start punching things in with the step sequencer, or possibly with note roll enabled. That's really janky, and suddenly my ability to work within the limitations of a device get stonewalled by different limitations of a device. Or I know that there are budget devices like the Roland MC101, for instance, where even with the tiny screen and limited number of macro knobs, you can get full access to the synth engine. Whereas seemingly on the Ableton Move, you can't. And it really feels like you should be able to tweak more synthesis elements than you currently can. In theory, I can accept the idea that Ableton set this thing up to be limited on purpose, because the more features you add, the more complex it gets, and they wanted it to be simple and intuitive, and they wanted you to not like hit a CPU cap, so you could layer as much as you want within the constraints that they've set. Let's say that they are 100% forthright with that, and that's exactly what happened. I still feel like there are some features or workflows that the Move should be capable of that wouldn't really increase the complexity, or in fact, would make it easier to use. And I know those things are possible, which is why part of me thinks that some of the limitations of the Move are just due to a lack of imagination or the device just not being fully finished. I don't know that, and if I'm wrong about the limitations I just mentioned, please tell me. I will pin a comment and potentially even, if I'm wrong enough, delete and re-upload this video with corrections. I would love to be wrong about some of these limitations, but as it is, I want to dig into the Move a lot more, but I find it a little bit frustrating. It's a better device than some people give it credit for, but there's quite a bit of missed opportunity that I would love to see filled with some firmware updates in the future. And if you've seen this device and you think, hey, I agree, don't buy it yet. Keep an eye on it and wait until they actually fulfill on what some of us maybe think the potential of this device could be. I'd love to see stuff like more in-depth synth tweaking, an overhauled quantization system, more than 32 sets, maybe slightly refined project switching, sidechain, stuff like that would go a long way towards really unlocking this device. And maybe I'm ignorant here, but I don't think any of that stuff would be impossible. As it is, I'll have to dig into it a bit more and get back to you with some more firm conclusions. If you'd like to see me talk about some devices that are now the Move's competition, you can check out these videos up over here, and I'll be back with a new video in a little bit. In the meantime, thank you so much for watching.